Okay friends, so it's been a bit over a year since I've been traveling and working remotely as a digital nomad, and in this video I wanted to address a couple of questions I get quite frequently, such as how the fuck do I make money while traveling, how do I find good accommodations for a longer amount of time as I'm usually staying around 2 or 3 months in each place, and how do I find friends at each location. Okay. Just got myself juice from a cafe around the corner. And now I feel much better prepared to spill the tea or spill the juice, however you want to say it. So a bit of a background of why I actually wanted to become a digital nomad. Basically, I always dreamed about working and traveling remotely since I was 16. Especially I wanted to work in a creative field and work remotely. And I've been working really determined towards that goal since I was 16. And when I was so close to reach it, COVID hit and crossed my plans for the next 2 years, which was obviously really frustrating. For many of us, obviously. But I felt very, very unaligned with my current state in life at that point. One thing you should really know about me is that I hardly talk the talk without walking the walk. So I've told everybody, and especially myself, that I would leave my hometown, that I would move to other countries and work remotely, and it would not happen. And I felt like I've betrayed myself in some point, so I was not really happy. So when it was actually possible to travel again, I was instantly I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna end the lease of my apartment and I'm gonna leave. And it was very, very terrifying, obviously, to sell all the furniture and everything and leave everything behind. But I felt so much relief. So one of the first accommodations me and my boyfriend back then had was from Trusted House Sitters. And if you don't know Trusted House Sitters, you may want to check it out. It's basically a platform where people who have a house with pets or a lot of plants can offer their accommodation, their house, for free for people who want to take care of the house during the time that the actual owners are gone. So yeah, it's accommodation for taking care of the house or the pets. And we found a farm in the middle of Italy where we had to take care of 2 donkeys, 4 dogs and 2 cats. And generally, I think it's a really good system, Trusted House Sitters, and there are amazing houses there, so the pros are really obvious. So you have free accommodation, and mostly there are accommodations which are actually houses from some people, so it's very well equipped, much better than holiday apartments. And you also have pets, so I really love to have pets around me, so that's actually a big plus for me as well. But there are a bunch of disadvantages which I wanted to mention as well, which we very much realized during our 2-month stay in Italy. One of them was that our accommodation, at least, and I think a bunch of other accommodations on Trusted House Sitters, are very off-grid, so very far from population, which makes the stay quite solitude. So I would not recommend to do it alone. The second one is that you obviously have to take care of plants or animals, and that requires that you have to water or feed them at a certain time of a day, especially with animals, obviously. So it makes you not as flexible as you might want to be sometimes, especially as if you want to explore the surrounding and maybe do a day trip with having dinner in the evening, but you always have to come home because you have to feed the animals in the evening. The third thing that we didn't really like that much is that at our house, at least, the owners were there half of the time. So there are some houses where the owners are gone for the whole amount of time, but some houses actually allow the owners to be there whenever they want, and we had that kind of a house sit, which made us often kind of uncomfortable and feel less homey in the house, and made us feel a little controlled, like we were housekeepers or so. So I would not do that kind of a house sit again. Another way how I found my accommodations was over Airbnb. Basically, what I did was, when I found an apartment I really liked and I wanted to stay for a longer amount of time, I of course asked for a discount because I stay there for longer, and very often they would actually give me a discount. Also, when I was already at the place where the accommodation is, I asked them if I could visit the apartment before I rent it, and that would often also be okay for them, that they show me the apartment beforehand. Then I would first of all know that it actually exists. Second of all, I could see if I actually like it. And then what happened actually was that we made a contract out of Airbnb, which made it much cheaper. What you can also do is, if you like an apartment which you find over Airbnb or some other platform, you can look if there's a actual website of this accommodation, because often they're guest houses or some kind of, I don't know, agencies or whatever, which rent these apartments, and you find the actual website of them, and then they don't have to add Airbnb or booking.com or whatever fees, and it is much cheaper. And you can also write them an email and ask for a discount, where they're sometimes even more open to give you a discount if you stay for a longer amount of time. So that's a good tip. Also, what I would recommend, especially to solo travelers, is to stay at a hostel for the first few days when you're in a new place. I did it in Cape Town and in Barcelona, and it has so many advantages. You get to know people really quickly. You can ask questions to locals which work in the hostel, and you also don't feel really alone when you arrive somewhere. So you automatically, at least for me, I feel more homey when I right away have some connections and can exchange some experiences other people have who are maybe already in the place for longer. I always have a couple of questions I also ask the people which work in the hostel, for example, which is the local platform to search for rooms. Maybe they even know somebody which can rent you a room, or they know a second-hand platform, which I always find really useful to find some little items which I maybe lack, which I can't take with me. I always buy plants when I'm in a new place, so sometimes I search for plants also in second-hand platforms, stuff like that. And then, of course, there are usually some events planned from the hostels, community events, community dinners, or there are some sightseeing tours which start from the hostel, or you just meet other travelers and you can get together and explore the city in the first days together, and you automatically feel a little bit more welcomed and you arrived in this city. Which gets me to the next question, which I get really frequently, which is, how do I find friends in the new places? And honestly, this has been a really heavy question for me, especially at the beginning when traveling alone. I was really afraid that I would just be alone for the whole time when I'm traveling alone, which is never the case. I always found really amazing people, but obviously if you start traveling alone, this is really frightening. So here are my best tips of how I usually find friends in new places. The first one I already kind of mentioned. I usually stay in a hostel for the first few days, and usually I made friends with other travelers, but sometimes the other travelers don't stay as long as I do, so often I also connect with the volunteers. Usually there are volunteers in hostels, and I made friends, especially in Cape Town, with the volunteers. Also, in all of the destinations I've been to yet, there has been a really active digital nomad WhatsApp group, which has a lot of subgroups. So to find it is sometimes a little tricky, but I explain how I found the ones I've been in so far. But usually if you found them, you're settled, because there's so many events. Usually also people go there alone, so you meet people really, really easily. And there are a lot of subgroups depending on what kind of interests you have. So for example, hiking, diving, photography, sports or whatever, solo travelers and events. So there are a lot of different subgroups, and you can choose which ones you want to join. And then there are a lot of events where you can join as well, and it's not weird or awkward to like show up alone there, because there are a lot of solo travelers going to these events as well, and you meet a lot of people. In Cape Town, I found like this big WhatsApp group through the hostel I stayed in, and the first 3 days there was a flyer hanging there, and I just joined the group via a QR code. In Barcelona, I had a little bit of trouble to find this group, and I went to a digital nomad meetup, which I found over the Meetup app. You can join this as well. It's an app where there are some events which are posted there, and I went to one of the events, and then I connected to other digital nomads and asked them, hey, I was searching for like the most active WhatsApp group for digital nomads here in Barcelona. Is there any? And then they invited me to the WhatsApp group. And here in Bali right now, I also joined like a bunch of WhatsApp groups about digital nomads, but none of them were really the one I was looking for. And then I was joining a Facebook group and asked within the Facebook digital nomad group, hey, which is like the most active WhatsApp group for digital nomads here in Bali? And then somebody recommended me the one WhatsApp group which is like the most active, and I joined it. And yeah, there are a lot of like nice subgroups, and it's very, very active. Another way how I made friends is through Bumble BFF. I don't know if you know Bumble, it's similar to Tinder, but Bumble BFF is like for finding friends. It was kind of weird at the beginning to like date new friends, but honestly it's been very, very worth it. I met so many like cool people over Bumble BFF, and especially also in Barcelona, one of my besties in that time was I found her over Bumble BFF, so you should definitely check it out. And of course, like I think everywhere you find new friends over like the same hobbies. For example, I joined a free diving course and I made some friends there. Or if you're interested in volleyball or tennis or surfing or whatever, there are local groups where you can join and you meet people over that as well. And now to address the most frequent question I get, which is how the hell do I make money as a digital nomad, especially as a photographer? I think at the core of it all, it is very, very helpful that I'm a self-portrait photographer. So basically, I don't need anybody else to shoot my photos with. So I'm not reliant on any models or hand makeup artists or stylists. So I would say I'm half content creator, half photographer. So I do have a couple of jobs where I think is more like content creation for brands, especially for Adobe, but also for American Tourister and other brands, where I create content for their pages, for TikTok, Instagram Reels, sometimes YouTube. And I also do bigger jobs, such as a job I did in November for Davidoff, which was a really, really big shoot where I had to actually drive back to Munich to actually be present and shoot the photos, obviously, and edit them afterwards. I also license my photos. So, for example, currently there is a big conference happening in September in Germany, like a photo conference, and they licensed my photos to use them as billboards for promoting like the conference, which is amazing. So I got money for that, and also I of course still have like my courses online where I get passive income, like my Skillshare courses and my Udemy courses, and I get a little money from YouTube AdSense. So that is basically how I make money while traveling. So I hope I answered a couple of questions you probably had in this video. And in the next one, I'll show you a full day of how my remote work looks like here in Bali. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you next Thursday. Bye.
Whew, okay, I made it